I've got some troubling news about England's royal family.
It began with a closed door, and a voice raised so loudly that even the palace staff froze. King Charles had just been handed an unexpected request. Princess Anne, the one royal known for never wasting words, was standing before him insisting that Meghan deserved one final chance. The silence that followed lasted only a few seconds before Charles slammed the folder onto his desk. No. The single word echoed through the room, but Anne didn't leave. She calmly replied that if Charles refused to hear the full story, he would be making the biggest mistake of his reign. What could possibly make Princess Anne defend someone she had reportedly kept at arm's length for years? And why did Charles look less angry than afraid? Before we continue, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Now let's uncover the story behind the meeting that was never supposed to happen. For months, the royal household had appeared unusually quiet. Public appearances continued, official statements remained carefully measured. Yet behind palace walls, something had changed. Letters were arriving through unexpected channels. Trusted advisors were requesting private audiences. Even longtime staff noticed conversations ending the moment anyone entered the room. Then came the request. Princess Anne personally asked for a private meeting with the king. She rarely involved herself in family disputes. Her reputation had always been built on duty, discipline, and staying above emotional drama. That alone made Charles curious enough to agree. What he didn't expect was the first sentence Anne spoke. "Meghan wants to come back." The room immediately grew cold. Charles had spent years trying to stabilize both the monarchy and his own family after endless public controversies. The idea of reopening that chapter felt impossible. Yet Anne insisted this wasn't simply about reconciliation. According to her, Meghan wasn't asking for forgiveness, she was asking for protection. Charles immediately questioned what that meant. Protection from whom? Anne refused to answer immediately. Instead, she slid a sealed envelope across the desk. Inside wasn't a letter from Meghan. It was a timeline. Every major family dispute, every interview, every public appearance, every private meeting. Someone had assembled an astonishingly detailed record showing that several events everyone believed were connected actually weren't. Charles stared at the pages. Someone had been manipulating information from behind the scenes. But who? The discovery unsettled everyone involved because it suggested the family had spent years reacting to stories that had been carefully shaped by someone outside their immediate circle. Anne believed that if those hidden influences remained undiscovered, history would simply repeat itself. Charles remained unconvinced. Even if mistakes had been made, reopening old wounds could trigger another public storm. He wasn't willing to risk the institution he'd spent a lifetime preparing to protect. Anne understood his concern. But then she revealed something she had deliberately withheld. Meghan hadn't contacted her first. Someone else had. A longtime palace advisor. One of the king's most trusted confidants. According to Anne, that advisor claimed circumstances had changed dramatically. New information had surfaced that could alter everyone's understanding of the family's breakdown. Charles refused to believe it. His advisor had served the crown faithfully for decades. There was no reason to question that loyalty until another envelope arrived. This one had no return address. Inside was a copy of a private memorandum that had supposedly never left palace archives. The document wasn't signed, but it contained detailed summaries of confidential meetings held years earlier, meetings attended by only a handful of people. If the memo was genuine, someone inside the palace had quietly preserved records that contradicted the official versions of several important events. Charles realized the issue was no longer about Meghan. It was about trust. The palace launched an internal review in complete secrecy. Only a small circle knew it was happening. The goal wasn't to assign blame. It was to determine whether someone had deliberately fueled misunderstandings between members of the family over many years. As investigators quietly reviewed correspondence, they noticed a strange pattern. Certain messages had been delayed. Others had been summarized instead of delivered in full. Small omissions, minor edits, nothing dramatic on its own. But taken together, they painted a disturbing picture. Miscommunication wasn't always accidental. Somebody had quietly benefited whenever family relationships deteriorated. Charles suddenly faced an impossible choice. If he ignored the discoveries, he risked allowing hidden manipulation to continue. If he acknowledged them publicly, the credibility of the institution itself could suffer. Every possible decision carried enormous consequences. Anne urged patience. She believed the truth mattered more than appearances. Charles believed stability mattered more than reopening old conflicts. Neither was entirely wrong. As the debate intensified behind palace walls, another surprise arrived. An unexpected ally stepped forward. It wasn't someone anyone expected. A former communications advisor, long retired from royal service, privately requested a meeting. For years, this advisor had remained silent. Now they claimed they could explain why so many misunderstandings had spiraled beyond repair. According to their account, several attempts at reconciliation had quietly taken place over the years. Phone calls, letters, private proposals. None had succeeded, not because either side always rejected them, but because timing, mistrust, and incomplete information kept getting in the way. The advisor admitted making decisions intended to protect the monarchy during moments of crisis. Looking back, they feared those decisions had unintentionally widened divisions instead of healing them. Charles listened without interruption. For the first time, he wondered whether everyone involved, including himself, had become prisoners of assumptions built over years of conflict. Then came the revelation that changed everything. The advisor mentioned an old letter, not an official document, a personal one. Written years earlier by a respected senior royal whose wisdom had guided generations of the family, very few people even knew it existed. According to palace tradition, the letter was meant to remain sealed until a future monarch faced a family crisis that threatened both private relationships and public confidence. Charles immediately ordered a search. Archive rooms were opened, locked cabinets examined, old correspondence reviewed. Days passed, nothing. Then an elderly archivist remembered something, a forgotten collection stored separately during renovations years before. Among dozens of carefully preserved boxes sat a faded leather portfolio. Inside was a single handwritten letter, still sealed. Charles opened it alone. No advisors, no secretaries. Only Princess Anne waited outside. When he finally emerged, his expression had completely changed. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked reflective. Anne asked only one question. Was it real? Charles slowly nodded. The letter didn't mention Meghan. It didn't mention Harry. It didn't predict specific events. Instead, it offered timeless guidance. It warned that the greatest threat to any family wasn't disagreement. It was allowing pride to harden into permanent silence. It urged future leaders to separate rumor from reality before making irreversible decisions. And perhaps most importantly, it reminded whoever inherited the crown that protecting an institution should never require abandoning compassion. Charles spent hours rereading those words. For days afterward, no announcements were made. Speculation grew outside palace walls. Inside, discussions resumed with a noticeably different tone. The king authorized carefully limited private conversations designed not to rewrite history, but to understand it. Nobody expected instant reconciliation. Years of hurt couldn't disappear overnight. But something fundamental had shifted. People who had stopped listening began asking questions instead. People who believed every chapter had already been written realized there might still be unfinished pages. The greatest surprise wasn't that Princess Anne had spoken on Meghan's behalf. It was why. She had never been defending one person over another. She had been defending the possibility that truth could still matter more than assumptions. That realization changed Charles more than anyone expected. He never claimed every disagreement had been caused by outside influences. He never pretended painful choices hadn't been made. Instead, he accepted a more difficult reality. Sometimes conflict grows not from one dramatic betrayal, but from hundreds of small misunderstandings left unresolved for too long. In the months that followed, palace insiders noticed subtle changes. Conversations became more direct, private meetings lasted longer, trusted advisors were encouraged to challenge assumptions instead of reinforcing them. Nothing about the monarchy transformed overnight, but neither did it remain exactly the same. The hidden letter didn't magically solve every problem. Its real power came from forcing everyone to ask uncomfortable questions before reaching comfortable conclusions. Perhaps that was the lesson its author intended all along, because history isn't shaped only by the decisions leaders make in public. Sometimes it's shaped by the conversations they finally choose to have behind closed doors. And maybe that's why the meeting between Charles and Princess Anne became so important. Not because it immediately reunited a divided family, but because it reminded everyone that even the deepest divisions begin to change the moment someone chooses understanding over certainty. What do you think? If you were in King Charles's position, would you have opened the door to another conversation? Or would you have protected the institution by leaving the past behind? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next royal documentary.